My name is Rami Pruitt. I am the founder of DonorSync. It is a tool in order to aggregate your donations across different platforms. And I created it because I realized that there's not a tool right now for that. And so today, this video, if you've probably seen the title, it's about what is the system design of DonorSync. So this is for anybody who's a software engineer and interested in system design. Perhaps one of the most important things that you could learn as a software engineer in order to boost your ability as a indie hacker and create businesses is system design. Even if AI is able to create these systems faster, a person needs to understand what languages to use in order to get the tool or in order to complete a goal. And so I'm giving you a comprehensive look at what DonorSync is built in. And so if you don't know, DonorSync there's 3 services that I have built for DonorSync in order to reach its core MVP values. So I'm going to share my screen. I've listed these 3 features, which is what I think DonorSync is going to be about. So aggregating donations in a database, and I guess it shouldn't be like YouTube, from YouTube, Twitch, and Meta, and various different other platforms. It won't be just them. And clients can view basic analytics about said tools. So we're going to need a web app for that, and then manage user subscriptions and beta programs and beta programs via Patreon. So these are my 3 different things that I need to do for my MVP. And so you could do things such as one monolithic service for this, right? If you know a language like Python, JavaScript, Node.js, let's see, essentially you are isolating each feature as a microservice, which is better for debugging, but it still confuses on what the benefits of okay, so you're still confusing the benefits of a monolith. Okay, so if I just built this service in Python, I bet you I could get this done in a month. I'm gonna actually spend a little bit more time building these different services because I have to do a lot of context switching, and I don't necessarily need to, because what I'm doing right now is so simple that it could be just one monolithic service. So if you need, I have a good enough budget where I could be out the industry for a year. That's why I am thinking about the long term. A monolithic service is again, I'll give you the case study of Instagram. Instagram was just one big, or StackOverflow. They're just one big service, and especially if you don't have a team of people, it really doesn't make sense to use microservices. And at the same thing, debugging with a microservice can be a pain because it's over the internet. Like, imagine I just created a beta in Userhub, right? And I need SyncView to test out that beta feature. Well, now I have to have 2 services running on my computer in order to test out those features. And then what happens when I deploy that to beta? Let's say I have it in prod, right? And I do a deployment for Userhub, and that breaks something in prod because I didn't necessarily test it. It worked in beta a lot better than it did in prod. And so when you have this monolithic service for creating something, it's a lot easier in that way. I just spent hours yesterday making SyncView, setting up all these different repositories. If I only had one repository, it would have taken me just an hour to set up this stuff. So if you are considering being an indie hacker and you are making a micro product, I think one of the reasons why you might want to do more services is if you're building a business, right? If you're building the next Google, you probably want to start with microservices. If you're building something like DonorSync, you can get away with a monolith. So just keep that in mind. I think because I love scalability, I think it has a lot of ways for me to do that, but I kind of feel bad. I feel like I'm talking about like, don't be like me, do yourself. And so what is the inspiration behind DonorSync? Well, so I've been in content creator groups and I've understood how important it is to have donations represent your true fans, people who are willing to spend money with you. And then when I tried to look up a tool that would unify all these different platforms, then I realized that there was no tool to do that. If you use Streamlabs, you can only look at donation data during your live stream on one platform. And so it's not hard to have donation data from various different platforms all in one of your systems. And so I have other indie hacker ideas. It's just, this one is the simplest. So I wanted to start with something simple, which is just pulling data from different platforms and storing it all in one place and doing it live. And so with all of that, I think it's a great warm-up project for me. It's a real pain point for content creators. So Sean, if you're looking for an indie hacker idea, I think this is very important. Let me get a close-up for me. So if you are looking for an idea on how to be an indie hacker, I think many people have this idea that they are going to build the next Netflix or whatever, right? And they have never sold a DVD in their life. That's bad, because although there's probably room in the market for a better Netflix, he has no idea how to build Netflix up from the ground up. He has no idea about the business. He has no tech understanding of that. You need to be looking for products that are small, niche. You're not competing with anybody else, and it's a real pain point for other people. You would be surprised. I will give you the example of Peter Level's Remote OK. He has this product where all he does is he pulls information from one platform, he posts jobs, remote jobs about for people who want to find remote jobs back in the day. And he has said that he makes 50 grand a month from that product, just from asking companies, do you want to post on my website? It costs $500. It costs $1,000 to do that. And so you don't necessarily need to come up with the fastest algorithm. You don't necessarily need to create a new Netflix in order to make $5,000 a month, right? Imagine you build a tool that just texts people a reminder about their appointment. This could be some way for you to make $5,000 a month. Once you're making $5,000 a month, you can pay your rent and you can go after something big. But my number one advice for you guys is to always start small for these products. You would be surprised how much people are willing to pay you for these small, tiny products. And so really appreciate that question, Sean. I hear SQLite is really fast these days. So yeah, SQLite could be something that I'm going to build. I just think because that's a good question. Like, I could make a SQLite database where it's connected to users. There's a paradigm coming up with like a user per DB, right? That way, if the data is not necessarily all connected, we don't have to store it in a way. And that's something that I could think about, right? I'm planning to do Postgres, but SQLite is way more cost efficient. And so I appreciate Sean for making me think about that. It's because I'm just not sure. There is, in system design, there is no one way to do anything, right? There's just choices and trade-offs. And so there is a big resurgence on SQLite. And so that is definitely something to be thinking about. What's up to my guy, Kid Carlton? Yeah, AWS. Azure seems government-focused big companies. Yeah, you want to pick a cloud that's focused on you. You don't have to pick Fly.io. You can pick something like Vercel. You can pick something like Heroku, right? You can pick something like, I've heard of Render as well. These are all great companies for indie hackers because they're built for indie hackers. Instead of being built for these big companies they can take 10 grand, right? So yeah, just be on the lookout for that. And is it possible to put a project like this on something? Yeah, you can do it. So Vercel is very front end focused, right? When you do something like Vercel, it's going to be, you're going to like, I could not create, if you want to have a monolithic service, if I was going to do a monolithic service in Vercel, then I could, because it'd generally be a Node.js service with some Lambdas, right? If I wanted a Lambda-based architecture, then I would use something like Vercel because it's really good for scaling out your front end, and then it has Lambda support where if you don't know the difference between a server and a Lambda, it's just like what I said earlier, where in 200 milliseconds, it tries to put your code on that machine, and then it runs the code. And so I'm not really looking for a Lambda-based architecture in this because, again, with Lambdas, that's where you incur some of that cost with like a million requests, like, or something costing you like 10 grand. So you have to be careful with Lambdas, and then Lambdas have cold starts, right? So let's say YouTube has a donation and they send a webhook through my service, right? And I do a Lambda, right? So you only have a certain amount of time to respond to that webhook before, YouTube says, oh, he missed the webhook, we're moving on. And so if my Lambdas takes 200 milliseconds in order to spin up that data, it might miss that webhook. I think it is possible. I just haven't thought about it. I think servers are just more cost effective for indie hackers. But you could build this in a Lambda based architecture. Yeah, glad my guy Sean agrees. What up, my guy Thin? So glad you're here. If you have any questions, just let me know. But other than that, I think I'm gonna end this on my what I think, yes, and what else are great languages? I would say Elixir is kind of up there as well. But if you're looking for a language in 2025 in order to become an indie hacker, I would say Python and Node.js are probably your best bet. So, best languages. For indie hackers, I would say Python and Node.js. Why am I saying Python, right? So Python is a language that's really easy to write. And so you've seen companies like Instagram go from 0 to millions of users with just Python. It can work at the highest levels because not everything needs speed. When you think about Python, everybody complains about how slow it is. But if you need to score a touchdown, right, the bases are loaded and you need to win, Python is definitely something that you could get something out fast without having to worry about different programming paradigms. And you can use it all the way from the front end to the back end. And so number 2, which is JS and JavaScript and /Node.js, or some runtime like Node.js. Let's just say Node.js. So if you know JavaScript and Node.js, you can do everything from make the backend all the way to making the mobile app and to making a web app all in one user base. There's support for various different platforms, and it is not a pain to write. It has, if you use something like TypeScript, and I guess I'll change that. I'll make it TypeScript. It has great, if you use like Node.js, they have great TypeScript support. And so you can have, I've seen companies like Uber go from their beginning days to using just TypeScript and Node.js. And so it's an extremely good language. And I'm using both of these in DonorSync. So let's start off with SyncView. SyncView is a Node.js app, and it will be using Svelte. So I'm going to say, I don't know how I'm going to display this information. So I guess I'll go back up here. SyncView is a Node.js Svelte kit app. So some of you guys probably don't know what Svelte kit is, right? It's a tool for building JavaScript engines, and it's not React, right? Most people build front ends in React. And when I was working at Amazon and Twitch, I was using React. So why am I using Svelte and Svelte kit in order to make SyncView? Well, I'm choosing Svelte because Svelte has better bundling and it's a lot easier to write. And so those two things, easeability, will help me with speed, as well as one thing that people complain about in React. If you look at Discord, it takes sometimes a long time for it to load up, and that's because it's built in React. React has large bundling size. Or you can look at Twitch. Twitch is a big monolithic React website, and although it's extremely good when you have large front ends like Twitch and Discord, it's not the best tool for indie hackers. For indie hackers, Svelte is great for building the MVP and getting something out in a fast time. It may not be the best tool when you want to scale up to 100 different teams, but for me as a independent developer making a tool, I'm choosing SyncView. And so, yeah, Discord is slow sometimes. That's just one of my pronounce your name, Don. Yeah, so Sync, it's so easy in React to make tools that are just too slow. And so Svelte is going to help me with that. It's going to be really good. So SyncView is going to be the things that I built some of the dashboards in. They have components, like if I want to build a histogram or a line bar, it's very good for that. And so JavaScript, I was thinking about, I'm going to keep it there. So I'm going to take that off. I don't know if you guys can see that. Okay, great. So we have SyncView. And next I want to say is the next tool I'm using, which I said is Python. Userhub. Oh yeah, and another thing, you see how these names, so SyncView, right? It sounds like something that you're going to view something in the front end. Naming your services is extremely important, right? And having good names is helpful. If you use something like ChatGPT is a great naming tool. Just say like, hey, I have this service and it's going to be my streamlined service. My product is DonorSync, right? This is how I came up with SyncView. I want some front end in order for my users to be able to view their analytic dashboards. What should I do? And it gave me a suggestion. It gave me many suggestions that came up with SyncView. And so if I had a team member on my team and they want to know, hey, how to fix something, I need to be able, I don't want to say just go to the front end, go to SyncView, right? Good names are important. It helps people understand the whole flow of the diagram. And so I have another service named Userhub, which is a Python service. And it's going to be a service for integrating with Stripe, Patreon, and Clerk for managing the subscriptions of my app, right? Why did I choose Python? Why not build everything in Node.js? Well, Clerk, Stripe, and Patreon, excuse me, I just burped. Clerk, Stripe, and Patreon have extremely good support for Python rather than Node.js. They do have support for Node.js. Actually, I would say Clerk has better support for Node.js than it does Python. But I thought with the tools that I'm going to be using, Patreon and Clerk, I think it's going to be able to interface with those tools a lot better than if I just built everything in Node.js. And so I have a separation of concerns, right? I have one service that does everything front-end related, and then I have another service that does everything. I don't know why it's not letting me. Okay, there it is. So I have one service that is doing everything front-end related, and I have everything that goes with users. Let's see if I can manipulate this. All right, great. So, and then I have another service called Userhub that is doing everything, doing all the business backend logic that is for my Python app. And so I'll take a second. Let's see what they're saying. A mobile app and their mobile app is in React Native. Somebody said their mobile app is in React Native. So yeah, you got it right. Spelled it differently. Appreciate it, my guy, Sean. So yeah, we have Userhub and we have SyncView. And let's go back up. So we have Userhub and SyncView. And so I have separations for concerns, right? Like when you have a service, a monolithic service, and you're doing everything in that service, it gets kind of messy, right? It's hard to understand what's going on. And so if I had a team, why do some companies choose microservices architectures over, I just got a text. Why do some companies choose microservice architectures over monolithic services? It's because when you have a monolithic service, it just depends on the need. So if you have a monolithic service, if you have 1,000 employees, right, all working on one monolithic service, it's easy to break everything, right? It's hard to understand what's going on. You're looking at millions and millions of lines of code. And one thing, it's not obvious to see how one thing will affect another, right? So you need to have scaling strategies around that monolithic service in order to make sure that everything stays up and everything is integrated. But you've seen companies such as StackOverflow take their scale up to millions of users with just a monolithic service. So it can work, right? StackOverflow was just, I believe, a C# monolithic service, 2 big ass databases. And yeah, and so it's possible to do everything that I want to do in DonorSync in one service. And I guess if I had to choose a service, I would choose something like Python just because it gets his start. But I want DonorSync to be able to scale to its first 1 million users, and I want to be able to do it with a small amount of a team. And so that's why I'm choosing to do more than a monolithic service. Because if I had a monolithic Python service, right? If I had a monolithic Python service, it would be faster for me to write, but let's say in the 2 to 3 month mark, you need, I would have to maybe rewrite everything. And so it's important to keep this in mind. But if you want to make $5,000 a month, right? You could make $5,000 a month with a monolithic Python service. So don't feel like you need to do things my way. I think I just want to use the best tool as it needs. So, excuse me, let me get that up. And the last service that I'm going to be working on for the MVP of DonorSync is SyncStream. So SyncStream is going to be for managing the polling different services like YouTube in order to figure out if somebody services like YouTube and storing them in a database. So we have SyncStream. And so I'm not going to say what SyncStream is built in. And so I'm going to be building this app in front of you guys and showing you a lot of the things that I'm going through. But the one thing that I'm not going to show you on my stream is SyncStream, because SyncStream is the moneymaker, right? I think the main reason why I have chosen this model of building software is because I want to teach people what it takes in order to build apps. And so, but at the same time, I don't want people to be able to copy me as easily. So a lot of things I'm going to be doing behind the scenes where you cannot see it for SyncStream, because that's probably the service that holds the foundation of my things together. But I did want to talk about it. So I have these 3 services, Userhub, SyncView, and SyncStream, that are going to be my main services for DonorSync. And I am going to give you behind the scenes information about SyncStream on my Patreon. And if you want to check more information on that, just stay tuned. But these are the 3 services for DonorSync. And I'm going to be using, for my database, I'm going to be storing everything in Postgres. So Postgres, you could literally do it in any database, to be honest. So all I'm just doing is aggregating data. And so if I really wanted this to scale up and be pain free, I would choose something like a NoSQL database like DynamoDB. Or I wouldn't say MongoDB, something close to the DynamoDB, like Cassandra, something that's optimized for high writes. And so you got to understand the strengths and weaknesses of different databases. So Postgres, the reason why I'm using Postgres is because it's cost efficient. And so I could pay $5 a month in order to scale up to my first 200 to 300 users. So, oh yeah, my brother said, don't forget to hit the like button. But yeah, I can use something like Postgres to scale up to my first 200 to 300 users with only having $10, right? $10 a month in order for my first database. And then as it scales up, I'm going to transfer over into probably a pay-as-you-go version of SQL. Generally what I've seen is those start off at like $30 a month. And so with that, I wouldn't have to worry about scaling it. But with this $20 a month, $10 a month, I have to do things like making sure that I have backups, making sure that if it reaches capacity, I have to migrate it over into a bigger database. I have to do all these various different things that is required for a Postgres database. And so that's the first reason why I'm using Postgres. You don't have to use Postgres. It just depends on what you need. And I realized I have a typo on Patreon right there. So And then lastly, the cloud that I'm going to be using. Many people would think, since I have Amazon in my resume and experience, that I would use something like that. But I'm going to be using Fly.io. And why am I using Fly.io? Because it's built for indie hackers like you and me, right? You have to understand that Amazon and GCP are built for large organizations like Amex, like a bank or something. It's not built for people like you and me that need a product that we're trying to scale a product to make $5,000 a month, right? Imagine you had a product that makes $5,000 a month. Well, with Fly.io, you can have 4 servers on their platform for free, right? That's enough for your beta, that's enough for your gamma and your prod if you're building a monolithic service. And so with this architecture, I think I'm going to, I prefer Fly.io. You've also seen things like Amazon charging people, like running up a $10,000 bill on Amazon. And that's because of this hype, which is serverless platforms. Serverless platforms make a lot of sense when you have millions and millions of customers. But if you want if you only have like 10,000 customers, well, serverless doesn't always make sense. And serverless is not a great use case in this scenario because of, if you guys know Lambda, it spins up an environment in like 200 milliseconds. In less than a second, Amazon will put my code on a server and then it'll start taking requests. Well, let's say I have 1,000 users, right? And they're all getting donations from 4 to 5 p.m. Well, you're going to have burst traffic sometimes. And I think that's one of the challenging parts about DonorSync is how does it scale? So when you are making these products, right, maybe you're building it in Monolithic, but you always have to be thinking about, if you're a serious software engineer, you always have to be thinking about how is it going to scale up to my first 1,000 customers? How's it going to scale up to my first 10,000 customers? How's it going to scale up to my first 100,000 customers? And so with this setup, I think it'll be able to scale up to my first 100,000 customers just like this with these 2 services. But if it was a monolithic service like Python, it might be, it could work, but it'd be a pain. And so that's all I have on DonorSync, and it's designed. Hopefully you guys are not copying me in the future, but if it is, here's how it looks. And I guess let's just answer some questions. So DonorSync is going to be like my system design for DonorSync to scale up to its first 1 million users. Actually, I'm probably going to say, I feel like this stack can probably scale me up to 100,000. And then we'll be there. We'll see what happens from there. But I'll give you guys updates about how many customers I have. If I don't get any customers, what it's like going through this. If you're interested in that, in my journey of scaling up these 3 services to my first 100,000, or if I have to change, if I need to go to a SQLite, let me know in the comments and I'll keep you updated. Subscribe, like, I really appreciate it.